Did anybody else see this interview where Jonathan Majors was on Good Morning America and he was speaking about his incident with the lady Grace, I forgot her last name. I want to say Grace Kelly, but I know that's not like Jabari, I think. Grace Jabari. Did anybody else see that? The interview was really interesting. It was fascinating to sort of see him sort of trying to deal with this, right? He was dealing with he actually brought up the issue of race, and he said, he talked about when the lady was chasing him down the street. He said, what if the races were reversed and I was chasing her? If I was a black man chasing a white woman down the street, then you'd probably want to shoot me. And I agreed. I completely heard everything he had to say, and I thought he did a good job in the interview. Now, what I think about the interview isn't going to really matter as much as what America thinks, because that's where he makes his money. And I personally thought that he surprised me, because I thought that he was going to have to do what a lot of people do to survive in Hollywood, which is pretty much take full responsibility for even things you did not do. Act like it's completely your fault, even though it sounded like it was two people that were in that fight, not just one. Um, no, literally nothing that even makes room for this idea that it was an ambiguous experience, as opposed to just a man, that decided to beat up on his girlfriend or something. And so, anyway, one of the things that's interesting, though, too, is since we're talking about things like financial consciousness in our training, I thought it was, the wisest thing I heard Jonathan Major say in the interview. I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched a big chunk of it. The wisest thing I heard him say was that he shouldn't have been in the car. And he said also, I shouldn't have been in the car. I shouldn't have been in that relationship. And this, I think, ties into what we've been talking about. We've been talking about relationships, the relationships you have, and being conscious of where you are, where you go, who you're around, what you're doing, who's in your life, who's not, etc., because that will affect your finances. I think it was incredibly financially unconscious for him to even be in the position that he's in and have a volatile, crazy relationship like that. I get it. A lot of us have crazy relationships. I mean, how many of you have ever had a relationship where things were a little bit wild and, got kind of crazy? It happens to a lot of us. It happens to the best of us. But I can remember, I think when I was about Jonathan Major's age, maybe a little younger, I remember thinking to myself, I said, if I get into a situation where I'm dealing with someone, this is way before I married my wife. This is when I was still, single and ready to mingle and all the other stuff. I said, if I'm in this, I said, one thing I will not tolerate in any relationship that I'm in is a person who is violent. If you are trying to provoke me into violence, if you are violent toward me or whatever, I had a protocol. It was called what I called the Shutdown Protocol, and the Shutdown Protocol was, I'm going to shut down. I'm not going to participate in this anymore. If we can't debate this and talk about this as adults in a productive way, I'm going to walk away. And I did that for my own safety and protection to be, and that was a financial consciousness exercise, because at that time I had just taken my job as a faculty member at Syracuse University, and I was making $115,000 a year, which was a lot of money to me at that time. And I remember saying, I'm not going to lose everything because I'm trying to explain a situation that is going to be biased against me because I'm black. My father, a long time ago, I remember him telling me, and this is a risk management statement, by the way. This is all linked to investing and everything we talk about now. And I want to make sure I make that connection so you don't think I'm just talking in different circles. But I remember my father saying that a person who has something to lose should never be around people who have nothing to lose. And what does that say? Well, that says, look, if you're Jonathan Majors, you got a lot to lose. You got a lot riding, and he understood that a little bit. He gave that whole, where I guess she recorded him when he's speaking, which I think that's just underhanded, dirty. I would never record someone in a romantic relationship unless they were trying to kill me or something. But she recorded him saying, I'm a great man and I need a great woman and I need you to be like Coretta Scott King and all this other stuff. And I think that he was right. I think that they were in a position where they were going to be dealing with some pretty heavy scenarios, and we can't be out here acting like a couple of crazy people. We can't be getting into dumb situations and and making a fool out of ourselves. And so I think ultimately, from a financial consciousness standpoint, I think that Jonathan Majors moving forward needs to be very thoughtful about the relationship that he's in. This is not This is not disconnected to your economics. When I chose my wife is gorgeous. My wife is smart. My wife is amazing. But I'll be honest with you. When I was open for marriage, there were other women around, very pretty, very interesting, and I'm a man. We pay attention. And one thing I remember thinking is I want to be really careful about the kind of person I let into my life that's going to be that close to me. Do you understand? And it all came back to how are you going to present what we're building? We're building something here. We're building a family empire. We're building legacy. We're impacting millions of people. We're able to do something that's pretty extraordinary. And I'm not going to have that get messed up because I can't control, because I'm being led by my penis or something. Excuse my French. I don't mean to use that term, but like that's what it is. I think a lot of men ruin themselves financially because they don't have the discipline to pick the right kinds of women to be around them. And I think women also do the same thing. I saw a woman uh, who was it? Well, I mean, I hate saying it like this, but when you think about, I know at least four women who are very successful who got killed by their husbands. Let's just say that, right? And again, you can't blame a murder victim, right? There's no way, there's no blaming in that other than the murderer. But in most of those cases, I feel like there were red flags, and I feel that there wasn't enough consciousness in terms of sort of being able to say, this is not a good man to have around me. I think that when somebody shows a sign that they could be disruptive to your life, I think you walk away. Like I'll give you a real life example, true story. Never shared this with anybody, so please don't tell too many people because I don't want to be embarrassed. But over 20 years ago, I was dating a woman who was upset at me and threatened to call my job and tell a lie, like literally just make something up. And I was like, but I didn't do anything to you. Like, she's like, it doesn't matter. I can just tell people, the story and they're going to believe me. And at that moment, I did not say a word, but at that moment, I said, I'm going to get as far away from this person as I possibly can, because you're revealing to me that you're dangerous. Maya Angelou always said, when people show you who they are, you got to believe them. And a lot of times, we don't want to give up on people. We want to stick it out. We want to sort of we believe in the possibility of people, and some people don't need to be in your life. All of you are here because you are wealth builders. All of you are spending this. Is today Monday, but this Monday morning with me because you got a dream, you got a vision, you got a plan. Your goal is to elevate. You're like an airplane that's trying to take off and go to the next level. Well, one of the first things we learned in flight school, when loading up an airplane, is you have to measure something called weight and balance. Weight and balance. And that means and if you get that wrong, then your plane will crash. You will spin out of control and you will die that day, possibly. So, what I encourage you to consider is as you elevate your financial consciousness and you start vibrating on a higher level, measure your weight and balance. Some dead weight you got to get rid of. Some situations keep you off balance. Uh, Try to consciously be around people and in situations that are not just going to keep you from sinking, but are going to actually propel you to the next level. So, for example, if I'm consciously making an effort to have economic conversations with people who believe in hope and possibility and have confidence, then I'm naturally going to be affected by that. I'm naturally going to walk around with more confidence, more hope, and more possibility. Because you got to understand, look, when you're trying to do something that is to some extent a counterculture to your majority culture, right? You're in a community where there's a lot of economic despair. There's a lot of people that don't feel that that success is possible, that wealth is possible, etc. There's a lot of emotional dead weight that you kind of have to confront. There's a lot of people. Just yesterday, somebody told me about a professor who wants to debate with me about whether or not it's possible for Black people to build wealth and whether or not building Black-owned businesses is going to help Black people get closer to liberation. And I said, why would I debate this guy? I don't have anything against him. I don't know him. And I said, what's his solution? Does he have a solution, or is his solution simply to tell us that everything we're trying to do isn't going to work? I said, I don't know. I don't respect that. I don't have time for that. I'm not going to debate you. You can believe what you want to believe. I can learn from you. I'll listen to you. If you want to tell me the pitfalls or the challenges, I'll hear that. But what I won't do is sit and try to argue with you over the fact that I'm an optimist and you're a pessimist. That's what we're saying. And this is really true. When you think about risk, here's the thing. We're going to get to the slides in a minute, but this is really a stream of consciousness at this point. I hope that's okay. I had a friend named Monica Mehta who wrote a book about entrepreneurs and which communities tend to be the most entrepreneurial. And Monica called me, it was like 12 years ago. Monica is very well, she's Indian, very wealthy. Like I remember her father, she calls one day, she's like, yeah, my dad just bought a mall and we got to go and fix this mall up because he just randomly decided to buy. I'm like, wow, that must be nice to have a father that can just go buy a strip mall, right? And that's literally, and I visited the mall. It was a gigantic mall, and they own this whole freaking thing. And her husband um like makes Marvel movies or something. So there's a lot he finances the movies. So very wealthy family, very nice lady. And she said, Boyce, I have a question I'm going to ask you, and I hope it doesn't sound racist. And I said, no, Monica Mehta, Mehta, very nice lady. And I said, no, 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 don't worry. I don't get offended easily, and I know where your heart is, so I'm not worried about that. And she said, I don't understand why African Americans don't start businesses. She said, when I look at the data for different communities, Indian and Arab and Asian and everything else, she said, for African Americans, the numbers are very low. And I said, really? And she gave me the numbers, and they were really low, much lower than your percentage of the population. And I said, well, there's this thing called slavery, and we spent a lot of time working for white people, and that's kind of what we teach our kids. That's sort of our mindset. Thank you, Darlene. That's a great word, right? And and she said, well, I have another theory too. And I said, well, what is it? And she said, I believe that it could be related to trauma. And I said, really interesting. Okay, explain that. That was one of my first explorations into how deep trauma, undiagnosed, untreated trauma affects your economic outcomes. My wife is a specialist expert in trauma. She's certified in it. So I now we really understand trauma at a very deep level in our Black financial therapy department in the Black Business School. And so what she said was she said that when you take a risk, there's always two outcomes possible, at least two, right? There's a chance that it's going to work out and the chance that it's not, right? And different people are going to approach risk in different ways. A person who's never gone through trauma, where everything's gone well in their life and they've been safe and happy, they're going to see all the possibilities. They're going to see all the good things that can happen. The person who's gone through hell or gone through a traumatic set of experiences or comes from a trauma-based society or community is only going to see the negative. And let me ask you this question. Give me a yes if you agree with this, if you've seen this. How many of you have ever like proposed an idea to your family members that was different, unconventional, gonna be hard to do, and felt like you just got rained on with a negativity fest? Anybody ever go through that where it's like, oh, well, that's not gonna work, and why would you quit that good job at the post office? And that's crazy. You don't have enough money. You don't know what you're doing, and how many of y'all? Anybody go through that? I mean, this is a common thing, right? And here's the crazy part: if you announce that you got a job, everybody's excited, right? They're holding a party for you on LinkedIn. You put, I got the job. I just got the promotion. You get 1,000 likes and shares and woohoo, way to go. It's almost like getting married. Like you were an old maid and somebody married, the white man married you, like somebody claimed you. Good for you, girl. Somebody claimed you. You ain't out here just in the streets no more. Right. And so it kind of creates an energy toward entrepreneurship that's unhealthy. It says that black person with the big dream who has nothing, who's trying to build something amazing, but hasn't succeeded yet, is seen as like a person that's number one being unrealistic. Number two, they are it's like, well, only reason you're starting that little business is because white people don't want you. Right? Am I right or am I right? Like it's like, well, that you're doing this not because that's your first choice. You're doing it because you can't get a job anywhere else, right? That's kind of the narrative that we tend to hear. And let me tell you why that is horrifically defeatist. It's very defeatist because what you've done at that point when the energy is that negative is you've given the entrepreneur a very thin margin of error, right? The reality of entrepreneurship is that it is hard. The reality is that there's a good chance you're going to fail. 85% of all black owned businesses fail. This is one of the reasons why this is the only area I get political. I say we need reparations so these businesses can get the funding they need to keep surviving through the failure so they can eventually get to their first success. Like Uber was an epic failure for almost 8 or 9 years where they were losing as much as $8 billion a year. And the only reason they were able to survive is because they had investors and funders and they had banks willing to loan them money, even as they're losing billions of dollars every year. Amazon lost billions of dollars every year, right? So a lot of black businesses that die maybe could have survived and done extremely well if they'd had more time. If somebody came along and loaned them $1 million to stay, to keep the doors open until they figured out their problems and go through their growth, they could be successful. And here's the issue. When you have that much pessimism in your face, and you're trying to already do the impossible. You're trying to climb Mount Everest, basically, and everybody's telling you that you're gonna slip on the ice. It's gonna be too cold. You're gonna get hypothermia. You're gonna hurt yourself. Like your brain's filled with this negativity. So the minute something goes wrong, there's nobody there saying, get up, come on, you can do it. Try again. Try again. That's the entrepreneurial energy you need. That's what entrepreneurs say to each other. Like, it's okay. Let's pivot. Let's solve the problem. Let's figure it out. No, you don't have that. You have a community of people saying, I told you so. I told you it wasn't gonna work. You put up that money, you put up that 40,000. Now you ain't got nothing. Now look at you. Now look at you. Right. So you get one shot. It's like a basketball game where the coach says, okay, I'm gonna let you shoot the ball one time, but it better go in. So you take one shot and you miss, and the coach takes you out of the game and says, I knew you weren't a good shooter anyway. You're gonna sit on the bench for the rest of the game. That's not going to give you the courage to shoot. What good coaches do is the coach says, keep shooting. I believe in you. Or he says, that's our quarterback. We're sticking with our quarterback, or we're gonna keep on giving the ball to Iverson, even though he had a bag. Right. There has to be a core belief that helps you fight through the adversity, that fights through the disappointment, the perceived failure, and that energy isn't always there when you have communities that haven't really seen that type of success before. Now we have that energy when it comes to things like sports, right? Football, basketball, entertainment. Typically, especially for black men, there's three major areas where black men become prominent. That's playing a sport, dribbling basketball, throwing a football, rapping, or telling jokes, right? That's why the most prominent people in your community tend to be athletes, rappers, or comedians, right? And this creates a very narrow corridor of potential success for a lot of young black men. So a lot of people waste their lives trying to be that one guy who gets a chance to get a comedy special on Netflix or whatever. Um, in those spaces, you do see that resilience. You see people keep trying and keep going and try again. And I'm never giving up. So you got these 45-year-old rappers still hoping to get their first record deal and everything else. And so I'm not really judging that, but what I am going to say is I think that that same energy should be applied to entrepreneurship. I think that one simple, very easy solution for the community in terms of wealth that would probably create a couple $1 trillion in wealth in the black community is if we had half as many black youth that became entrepreneurs as we do that become basketball players, football players, rappers, comedians, or whatever, right? Or we spent as much money sending our children to economic training camps as we send spending them to cheerleading camp and football camp and everything else, then those kids would not only be more successful, but remember, there's more space to create entrepreneurs than there are to create NFL players. The NFL has, maybe 20 or I don't know, maybe 40, 50 job openings per year. Whereas the entrepreneurial space, there are thousands of millionaires all across this country, millionaires being created every day. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that issue in terms of a consciousness exercise. I encourage you to consider it. So that lesson would be very basic, and we're going to read actually our eighth day consciousness lesson in a second. And to be honest with you, it actually I don't even think it has anything to do with what I just talked about, but I like to share things that just come to mind. So we're actually going to talk about your budget. So I'm going to actually lay that out for you too. But I think one consciousness exercise is to really be mindful of of the exposure of your ideas and your dreams when it comes to who is around them. Like if you have a newborn baby and the baby's small and sickly, that's that little dream you have. That little dream is very sick, it's very tiny. It might even be a little ugly baby. And you protect that baby, right? You don't want that baby around people that are going to give it germs, or if your child is on, or if it is an ugly baby, you don't want anybody around that's going to say, "Ooh, your baby ugly," right? You say, "Get the hell up out of my house." No, this is a beautiful child. They just haven't grown into their face yet, right? Whatever it takes, right? So I think that with your dreams, you got to protect the dream. You have to protect it from the people that are going to bring various psychological viruses in that will infect the dream and reduce the likelihood that your dream is going to stay alive, because that energy, that social energy, is very powerful. Every therapist, every psychologist on earth will tell you that the environment that you're in has a huge impact on how you see things, and I want you to be mindful about what environment you put yourself into. Got it? Does that make sense? Okay. So today's day 8 in the financial consciousness training. If you haven't gotten the book yet, the book, if you go to drboycebooks.com, look, you can go to the top, search for 30 days to Black Wealth and Power, and this is the workbook we're working on. If you haven't gotten your book in the mail yet, just know that Nicole is shipping them out every day. I see her in the other office, and she's shipping out just hundreds of packages every week. So we are going to get it to you, I assure you. And also, if you want to get the recordings of all this and every single reflection consciousness exercise we do, just go to drboyceelevate.com. That's drboyceelevate.com. Okay, so the question that I want to ask you today is about your budget, and I want you to really reflect for a minute on things you can cut out of your budget, just sort of what that looks like for you. Um, how do you go about sort of looking at your finances and trying to be more efficient about how you spend money? Budgets are really important. Budgets are a hugely important financial consciousness exercise, because budgets basically tell you where your money's going. And one thing about spending money is that losing money tends to be um it tends to be an unconscious exercise. And let me give you an example. Has anybody ever had a situation where maybe you got paid on your first job, and when you were a teenager, and you felt really rich? Like, how did you feel when you got that check? When you cat I don't know, but if y'all do the same thing I did, but when I used to get my check from Wendy's or Taco Bell, I used to go cash my check, and you would feel like you were Pablo Escobar, because you'd have this big stack of 20s, big wad of money, nothing less than a 20. Anybody remember that from Dope Man, Ice Cube? And so you'd have all this money, and you felt like you were the richest person on the planet. I don't know if anybody else felt that way, but I know I did. I would feel very confident, and psychologists will tell you that men tend to feel more confident when we have money, and I think women feel more confident just in a different way, maybe more secure, because financial insecurity studies show that bothers women a lot. When a man who is either financially weak or financially irresponsible or whatever. So if basically what I noticed though a long time ago when I started doing my first financial reflections was I noticed that there was a big difference between how I felt when I got paid versus how I'd feel a week later when all my money was gone. And it was like a magic trick. I never understood, where did my money go? Like, how did I go from having all this money to not having any money? And every time I got paid, I would swear to myself. Anybody else ever do this? I would swear to myself that I was going to hold on to my money this time. I was going to be really careful. But I'm like, oh, well, that's only $2, or that's only $5, or that's only $10, and then next thing you know, you have no money left. And so ultimately, budgeting is an important financial consciousness exercise, because what it does is it makes you alert to where your money's going. If you don't know where your money's going, then you won't know where your money went. It also creates limitations on where you're putting your resources. I have budgets for money. I also have budgets for time. I do a time budget. So, like, literally, I live my whole life. Actually, I did a whole life class. You guys can have it for free. It's blackkeystogreatness.com. Somebody type that in, please. Blackkeystogreatness.com. Blackkeystogreatness.com. This is connected to our Wednesday Powernomics training. And one thing that I do that helps me manage time is I live my life in 20-minute intervals. So what I do is, and when I start something, I look at the clock and I become conscious of the time, and I become conscious of when I want to stop. Right? That keeps things from spilling over into the rest of the day, and then the day going by and me saying, "Man, I have no idea where the day went." Or I'll even write down things I accomplish all throughout the day, so that I can be very conscious of what I actually did. So I don't sort of feel the anxiety that ambitious people tend to feel. I've always been really ambitious ever since I was 18. And one anxiety that would occur as a result of being ambitious was I never felt like I did enough. I never felt like I got enough done. Anybody else ever feel that way where you're just mad at yourself constantly because you didn't do as much as you know you could have done? And so to make myself feel better, I would write down everything I complete. So then when I start feeling that anxiety, I say, no, 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 boys, look at this, look at this list, look at all these things you did, right? And then so little things like that, financially and just with any resource that matters to you, I think really goes a long way. I think we should be conscious of not just where our money's going, we should be conscious of where our energy is going, conscious of where our time is going, all that stuff. So here are some little steps to cut your budget without reducing your lifestyle. Everybody has a different style of budgeting. For some people, budgeting is very natural, very easy. For some people, they don't enjoy it. I hate budgeting, to be honest with you. I don't like, or better yet, I didn't like having to cut things out of my budget. I never did. I just my preferred method is actually number 5 on this list, which is figure out how to make more money so that you can then still have money to save and still keep your lifestyle the same. I don't have expensive taste, but the things I want, I kind of want them, you know. So everybody has a different personality type, so there's no one way to do this. But here are a few ways you can cut expenses out of your budget. They say that these subscriptions, all these different streaming apps and services, the goal is to get you to subconsciously, unconsciously sort of commit to these recurring revenue streams. That's how they build their companies up. But unfortunately, it can become a massive burden because you're like, okay, $10 here, $20 there a month or whatever, $9 here for the Netflix membership or whatever. Well, they say that taking time to do a subscription audit can go a long way. Sometimes what I might do is just literally like block my credit card for a little bit so so they have to come in and knock at the door and I have to consciously make a decision to continue doing business with you. That way you're not slipping in and just grabbing money without me paying attention. Again, there's that consciousness term, right? You're unconsciously taking my money because I'm not thinking about it. No, no, no. I want every single expense to be justified. So subscription audits can really go a long way. Just looking at the things you subscribe to. I know a lot of people are doing that with the streaming services. Before, streaming was seen as a better alternative than cable, but now people are spending more on streaming than they do on cable because they usually subscribe to multiple streaming services. Number 2, grocery and meal planning. Planning your meals, reducing your grocery costs can go a long way. Eating out is a massive financial killer. So being very conscious of that, budgeting that goes a long way. What else? Insurance and financial products, reviewing that, reviewing your policies, just sort of taking a look once a year at least with your insurance and just making sure that you have everything in place in case something happens to you, because death doesn't always make an announcement. And then also just kind of looking to see what else might be out there, or do I actually need this policy anymore? If you're divorced and you get remarried, making sure your ex is not your beneficiary on your insurance policy at your job, things like that. And then on a lot of these accounts, like the 401ks and the bank accounts and all that, you can put a person on the list as somebody who should have access to your money in case something happens to you. If you have people in your family that you love and you provide for them, put those people on that list so that if something happened to you, like let's say that right after this conversation, you and I never talk again because you went to heaven, they can still go to your bank and get the money they need to pay the bills. Okay. Number 4, automate your savings. This is a big one. A lot of people spend first and save what's left over. I encourage you to do the opposite. I think you should save first and spend what's left over. There's nothing more important than your financial health. There's nothing more important than your financial future. There's nothing more important than your financial security. That's more important than your Netflix bill. That's more important than you paying money to your landlord. That's more important than anybody. I'm not saying that your landlord shouldn't get paid, or hopefully you can get rid of the landlord eventually and actually become your landlord. But ultimately, this that particular component I think is really important in terms of making sure that you have your nest egg saved up. Most people are financially vulnerable right now because they don't have anything saved or anything invested. They don't have any financial cushion. And one thing that we talked about the other day is that one problem is that we make the assumption that everybody has to do everything by themselves, and it is really hard in this country to survive on your own for a lot of people, especially those under the age of 35. Inflation has hit hard. If you don't have a lot of education or a lot of skill or whatever, it's just tough, right? And so ultimately, I mentioned to you earlier that I don't think you should ever make the assumption that you have to do everything by yourself. I think that makes things a lot easier. And for some of us, that becomes critical. And also saving that money. Saving is great because saving gets you prepared for the next step, which is investing, right? So you save to get your financial security. So you have your cash flow. They say 3 to 6 months of living expenses. I say do whatever you can, right? Just make sure you're taking that 10 to 15% out. No matter how much you're making, you're taking that 10 to 15% out for savings, and you're automating it. Just have it automatically taken out before you even see the money. That's a good process. And then creating what they call a friction to get the money, right? Like if I'm pulling the money out and I'm putting it over in this other account that I don't have easy access to, like or maybe there's a 5 day waiting period for me to get my money. That's a financial consciousness exercise that helps me save more effectively because I'm doing two things. Number one, I'm using unconsciousness to save, right? So unconsciousness can work for you if it is something that benefits you, right? So unconscious spending harms you. Unconscious saving benefits you. Let me know if you follow what I'm saying. Give me a yes if you get what I'm saying. So when you're having money automatically deducted, and I do this all the time. I have investment accounts where money just gets taken out every Monday. It's unconscious. I forget. I don't even think about it. And then I look over at the account, and once every 3 or 4 months, I'm like, oh, look at this. There's more money. It's Christmas. How cool is that? Right? Because I was unconsciously taking money out. But when I spend money, I want to be very conscious. I want to be alert. Like, what is that? What's that for? Why are you taking money out of my what's going on here? Right. So unconscious saving of that first 10 to 15% of your income is really important. You have to save your money so your money can save you. And then at that point, you go to the next step, which is to have your money work for you. So first, your money has saved you, and then it starts to work for you. Well, that's when you get into things like investing with stocks. You get into investing with real estate. So you're moving toward rich people. You're becoming a rich person now. You may not be there yet, but life ain't about what you are. It's about what you're becoming. So by engaging in those habits of investing, you're becoming a rich person. You're learning how to make money without working. If you don't know how to do that yet, make sure you text the word stock to 89748. There's a training called How to Make Money Without Working. I'll send it to you maybe on the second or third day or something. So text stock to 89748 and I'll send that to you. But literally, this is how I make my money. I make my money. I work with you because I like this. But when I make the money that I'm going to send to my wife to pay our credit card bill this week, that is not money I work for. That is literally money I make from selling stock options on select stocks with a specific portfolio designed solely for that purpose. Some of you are in the program. If you're not sure about it, you want to learn more, go to drboyceprime.com. That's where we meet and we talk about this. But there are ways to make money without working, but you have to have a capital base and you have to know what to do with the money. It works pretty good. I do it myself. All right, so let me keep going here. All right, last one. Here's my favorite budgeting technique. Side hustle survey. Try to find a way to add to your income. Maybe the first step in that might be to sit with people who also want to make more money and talk to them and say, okay, let's just talk about money. Let's just see if we it's 89748. So text the word stock to 89748. So ultimately, if you just start with a conversation, that right there will elevate your economic consciousness. Like literally just picking somebody in your family, somebody that's a friend, somebody that you trust. If you don't have good relatives, create new ones and just say let's get together and let's talk about money like once a week, and let's talk about business, let's talk about partnerships, let's talk about possibilities, whatever, right? And then maybe the first few times nothing else is going to happen. Now Harvey's asking what happened to the list. I had that list on that screen for a good 10 minutes, Harvey. You wasn't paying attention. No, he said I took it away. I did not take that away quick. I'm gonna leave it up there for a minute, Harvey, so make sure you write it down. Also, don't forget, if you log in at drboyceelevate.com, everything's in there, all the slides, all the recordings, everything. So I'm gonna leave that on the screen, but this time when I take it down, it's gonna be gone. So make sure you jot down what you want to get off the list. All right, so ultimately, those family meetings where you're just talking about money, just talking about business, just talking about economic opportunities, creating opportunities for yourselves and for each other as a family, that is a great way to connect and to bond, but it's also a great way to search and discover. But then the other thing too is I encourage you to have a learning component in there too. So if you had a family investment club, you could also make it like partly a book club or something where every month you're learning about new financial concepts and then you're learning how to apply them. Or if you're doing, I know that there are families that do the Prime program together, and there's a whole church. James Wilson has a whole church that's doing the Prime program together as a church, and so that this means that when they're sitting together, they are wealthy people all sitting together. And the reason they're wealthy is because they have a type of capital called human capital. When you're sitting there with people that know what's going on, that have a financial awareness that is at a very high level, that is a wealthier conversation than sitting there than a lot of people sitting together who don't know anything about what's going on. Now, if you don't know what's going on, that there's hope. There's always hope, right? You just have to add to what you're doing. You have to add to that capital base. So the knowledge capital base is easier to add to than the financial capital base. That's the first capital base you add to. You get the skill, knowledge is free. You go read stuff, watch videos, take a class, whatever it is. Then you're getting together and you're all talking and you're all kind of on the same page because you all have your heightened financial awareness. You have additional skill sets, additional networks. You have an understanding of where the resources lie. And this is another reason why I would suggest considering coming to the All Black National Convention, because if you do business with somebody at the convention, you don't have to wonder what kind of person you're talking to. Everybody at the convention is already at a certain level of economic consciousness. So these are great people to do business with. So not every group is created equal. Some groups have people that are really qualified, some groups have people that are less qualified. Find a qualified group, and that will allow you to get what you're looking for. Okay. So a couple more questions. It's 9:40, so we got about 5 more minutes here. Margie, I have an aunt Margie actually. What are your thoughts on high interest savings accounts? I love them. I think they're great. I think right now interest rates are really high. Also you can go to the Treasury. I think it's treasury.gov and get you can buy T-bills there. Now, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, people weren't really talking about putting your money in a bank or in a savings account because the interest rates are so low. Now that's kind of changed. There are great ways to make money that way, and so the interest rates have gone up. So I like them a lot. Tracy says, "Are Hollywood actors independent contractors if they provide a service for that person who wishes to make a movie? Is that an even exchange of energy? Therefore, should they receive fair pay?" Yeah, I mean, I think that they should receive fair pay. I'm all for. I tend to be pro union. Like I kind of feel like the unions are important in Hollywood because they help actors get what they deserve. I just think, though, in general, that the power balance is in favor of the studios because think about it. The person who writes the check typically has most of the power. So studios have access to capital. They've got, they say, okay, we got $100 million from a bank to make this movie. Who do we pick? Which actor are we going to pick? So we got 400 actors all applying for each role. So we got the pick of the litter. The supply demand equation is heavily in our favor. Same thing is true of record labels. A lot of people don't like the contracts that artists are forced to sign with record labels, but record labels have the capital base and the artist just has the talent. But talent is kind of everywhere. There's a lot of talent out there. And so effectively what I'm saying for black folks is I want you to understand how to get the capital base so that the power can be leaned in your favor. And it's doable. Tyler Perry did it. Tyler with that whole Medea thing. Tyler Perry had no capital base, but he did his plays. He bootstrapped his business's growth. And next thing you know, Tyler Perry, before Tyler was really even recognized by Hollywood, this man was able to make 10, $20 million, from different projects. So what he did was he tapped into his customer base. He gave them what they wanted and he made money from that. And that's how he built his capital base. Now he's got capital, but I encourage you to have your kids study how he got there, right? Because 15 years ago, this man was sleeping in his car and struggling and all that stuff, and it was the willingness to go through that struggle, I believe, that helped him become successful. And I say this as a person who has no plans to ever see a Medea movie. I don't want to do it. I talked to Tyler once on the phone. He called me. I don't call celebrities. Sometimes they call me, and we talked. He's a very nice guy. He told me at the time that he didn't want to ever do a Medea movie again. And I felt like that was a lie. I said that would be, I was thinking that's a lot of money that you'd be throwing away. And I was right. He said this in 2014, and y'all know since then he's made a lot of those movies. But again, objectively speaking, I admire the guy in terms of taking what he's doing and doing it his way and building his capital base and making himself one of the most powerful people in Hollywood. So it doesn't matter if I think he could have done things a little differently, a little better. Doesn't matter. That's his capital. He gets to make the decision, right? So Ginger says, "I love Medea." See, there we go, right? And so he doesn't make his movies for me. He makes his movies for Ginger. And I have nothing against you for loving a Tyler Perry movie. I get it. So ultimately, you got to find your people. You got to find, even when you're building a business, everybody's not going to want to be your customer. Everybody isn't going to like what you're doing. Not everybody likes what I'm doing, but there are people who do, and that's all that matters to me. I talk to the church. I don't talk to the people who are not coming to church. That's not. I'm not standing on the corner handing out pamphlets begging them to come in. I talk to the people that are already there. All right. So let's keep going. Couple more. Let's see. Okay, Ginger, you were asking to show the screen. I assume you saw it again the second time. So we can jump forward on that. Let's see. Camera. Hey, Dr. Boyce, I'm in the Prime School. Where do you talk about your stock option portfolio? If you log in, if you go to drboyceprime.com, you can see everything that's in the program. If you log in at the blackbusinessschool.com and look under Prime Plus lectures, every lecture I've done in the Prime program is in there, and I lay out, I pretty much tell you guys what I am buying and what I'm doing with those assets. That's under Dr. Boyce Moneymakers, and I release a list of moneymakers about once every 3 weeks. And so you can go and take a look at that. And if you have any questions in class, of course, I can answer it that way as well. Let's see, Ginger, have you heard that the banks are not a safe place for our money nowadays? Yeah, people run around saying these things, and I don't believe it. I don't agree with it. I think that people, I think there are people who build a whole career around scaring people because scaring people is the best way to get attention. And they've been telling you for 40, 50 years that the financial system is about to collapse. And I'm not saying that there aren't concerns out there, but even Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, is under some controversy right now because every year he's constantly telling people that the financial system's going to collapse, sell everything now, and the whole time the stock market's been roaring upward, and it's just been kind of it's kind of sad, right? It's not so I wouldn't get caught up in alarmist thinking. I would say rather than fearing the banks, I would probably not put all my money in one location. I think diversification, good old fashioned diversification, goes a long way. So having money in two or three different banks, and maybe having money in an investment portfolio here, and I have two or three different companies that I put my investment capital with. I have an account with Coinbase, an account with Robinhood, an account with E-Trade, right? And that's just because I'm thinking about the technology. What if the technology goes south and they forget that I have money, right? But if you have your money spread out, you're a little bit safer than if you have it in one place. Let's see here. Okay, you're gonna send an email to Chanel. Yeah, Chanel at boycewatkins.com. Chanell, Chanel at boycewatkins.com. Christian, any thoughts on certified financial planner programs, hoping to grow a business from it down the road? I don't know any programs that come to mind. I do think that is a great business though to get into though, and I bet you if you just do a simple Google search, you'll find a whole bunch of them out there. Let's see here. Tara says, "What do you think about loaning out your stock?" Robinhood's always asking. If you have no better use for your capital, then absolutely. I'm sure the interest rates that they pay have gone up, and what's happening is you're loaning your stock to somebody who's then going to use it for a short sale or something like that, and that's a good way to make a little bit of interest on your investment. If it's sitting there and you're not using it, then why not look into that? Does a retired person also have to save 10 to 15%? Asked Betty. I don't think you have to. I don't think there's any hard fast number, but I think even in retirement, saving and investing is still important when you retire, because the fact that you live to be 65 means you're expected to then live another 20, 25 years. So 25 years is a long time. So you want to invest and save like everybody else. The difference is that when you get older, you just take less risk. So you don't invest in as many risky assets. But for the most part, you're going to have to keep your money growing so that your money can last you. Three more questions, then we're out. Let's see. As a Muslim, I avoid usury. How can I build wealth, please? Okay, if usury is defined as collecting interest on any investment, I would be willing to bet you that there are ways around that Muslim countries and devout Muslims use. I'm not familiar with that. That's interesting though. I'm going to look that up a little bit and see what they do. But there's ways around it. There's ways you can get interest without explicitly calling it interest or capital growth without it being usurious, right? Usury to me, usury is when you're charging an interest rate that is unfair and way too high. But and I don't know. I'm gonna go look at that though. I'm gonna actually Google that right when we get done because I think that's worth thinking about. Let's see, Audrey, can you put a list of all your websites and what's in them so we know what to use when we're interested in? Okay, yeah, let me think about that, Audrey. That's a good question. I would start with boycewatkins.com. Boycewatkins.com is my main website, and you can find a lot of stuff at boycewatkins.com. And then drboycebooks.com. Drboycebooks.com is where you can find a lot of my books. So that would be two places to start. And then of course there's the Black Business School, theblackbusinessschool.com. Where can we get the replays? Patty, well, you can get them either at theblackbusinessschool.com or you can also go to some of the URLs are just to get you directly to the part of the website that you want to go to. So if you go to drboyceelevate.com, drboyceelevate.com, you can get the recordings of everything that we do in here. All right, let's see here. Okay, so that answers Melissa's question. And what are your thoughts on susus? Asked Ginger. I think susus are better than nothing. Susus don't, the limitation of a susu obviously is that you don't have your money growing, but it does at least have you in a space where your money is a little bit safer and you're accumulating money, right? So if you know the susus how they work, everybody puts in a little bit every week or every month, and then they pile it up, and then one person gets a big lump of money at the same time. So susus are a great savings vehicle that is community based, that leans on social pressure in a good way to help to force you to do things you may not necessarily want to do on your own. Because remember, with a susu, you could do the same thing, right? Like, so if a susu says you're going to get $1,000 every 10 weeks after you put $100 a week into this pot, you could do that yourself. You could save $100 a week for 10 weeks. The difference is that you don't have accountability partners that are going to make you do it. You don't have it, if you have discipline, self-discipline, you really don't need a susu to make you save. You do, because you're just saving yourself. But a susu can be good if you say, I really am having a hard time doing it. I need somebody to push me forward. That makes perfect sense. That's the little trick people don't understand. Most solutions to hard problems are not complex solutions. The complex part is not the solution. The complex part is the implementation of the simple solution, right? It's doing the basic simple things. That's why, for example, I'm doing this financial consciousness training for 30 straight days because it takes 30 days to form a new habit. So what we're really doing is not just teaching you about financial literacy and intelligence. We're going to do that. What I'm really doing is helping you form new habits. Your habits override your knowledge every day of the week. I know plenty of people who have great information, great knowledge, but their habits are so bad that their habits end up creating a divide between what they do and what they know they need to do. A lot of us go through that. When I was gaining all this weight and I was gaining 15 pounds a year, it wasn't like I didn't know how to lose weight. I knew what to do. I had to get up and go to the gym every day and eat better food. I knew it was easy. It was simple. I didn't have to go through a complex diet and take some special class. And no, I stop eating so much candy and go to the gym every morning. And you'll run 2 or 3 miles. You're gonna be fine. But it was the implementation that was the problem, right? So the accountability partner called my wife changed my life because my wife every morning gave me social pressure, not in a bad way, but she would remind me of what I promised to do for myself. So when she gets up at 4:30 in the morning, I roll out of bed with her, right? Because I made a commitment to do that. When I'm on the road and I'm not with my wife, I don't exercise as much as I normally do because there's nobody to remind me to get out of bed in the morning, right? So I don't care who you are. It's easier to get things done when you are in an environment or you're around other people that remind you of who you are and who you're trying to be, right? So I would encourage you to consider that, especially if you're trying to become someone different from what you are right now. You're very good at being you. You're not very good at being you plus two, right? You're not very good at being you 2.0, right? That's the new you. That's so in order for you to be the new you, you're gonna have to kill the old you and you're gonna have to build a new you. And growth is typically uncomfortable and painful, and that's why nobody does it. That's why very few people can do it. But I know you can do it, and because you've been coming here every morning, I think that's a great first step. So now you're in the habit. I mean, we're in day 8, so pretty soon you're going to be in the habit of doing money in the morning, talking about money every single morning. I think that's pretty awesome. I know I'm already forming new habits. I didn't do this every single morning, but it's been awesome. All right, guys. So let's head on out, and also if you are for those of you that are in the class, if you want to get a reminder of